So yesterday there was the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. The day before, the Irish president, or Ireland itself, had a sort of, I guess you could call it a ceremony, where the Irish president just couldn't stop himself from comparing what Israel is doing to Palestinians to what the Nazis have been doing to the Jews, as well as many other both ethnic groups and minority groups during the Second World War, during the Holocaust. So today we have I have the video, so we'll go through a bunch of it. Something happened. Some people were escorted from the building, or at least from the ceremony itself during the meeting. So we'll also talk about that. Joining me today is James, and James, anything to say beforehand? Just sort of put Ireland into the context. I later I also want to go if we have time to other stuff that has been happening in Ireland. But before we go to the video, anything to say before?
Well, in the context of the Holocaust, it's very important to remember that Ireland was officially neutral. Now, also to recognize that a free and independent Ireland had just come into being in the early 1920s, the Irish Free State. So they weren't a very old country, but while they were officially neutral during the Holocaust, there's a long history of anti-Semitism in Ireland. In the 1940s, there were only about 5,000 some odd Jews in Ireland. Today, there's only about 2,000 some odd Jews in Ireland. Most of them fled because of Zionism to Israel or America or Great Britain, but because of the anti-Semitism. Early in the 20th century, there were vicious anti-Semitic things going on, such as a boycott of Jewish businessmen in the city of Limerick. It doesn't really amount to a deadly pogrom, but it was systematic anti-Semitism that drove Jews away from the area. In the 1940s, Ireland had a policy against accepting Jewish refugees. Why don't they accept Jewish immigrants? They said in the 1940s, because we want to protect our country from increasing anti-Semitism. So admitting Jews in at all would create anti-Semitism, which kind of tells you about the Irish attitude towards Jews. Ireland has a very despicable history of anti-Semitism. Let's just put it that way. Groups like, although neutral, groups like the Irish Republican Army and Sinn Féin have been against the Jews, officially anti-Semitic. The IRA was cooperating with the Nazis, no question about it. So, yeah, the Irish need to take a hard look in the mirror because their vicious anti-Semitism is well known and has a long historical track record.
Yeah. So just before we go to the video, so this ceremony I believe was planned about a week or 2 weeks before, and the president was actually asked by the Irish Jewish community to basically not politicize the event, since it's marking the murder of 6 million Jews, besides many other people, and that this is really not sort of the place to go after the Jews. At the very least, it should be in a very bad taste. But we'll go. I guess let's watch the video. I think the bit I have is about 2 minutes. I think we'll stop it about 3 times. So let's go. Let me just make sure we have the sound also. Okay.
It is to be hoped, I believe, that those in Israel who mourn their loved ones, those who have been waiting for the release of hostages, or the thousands searching for relatives in the rubble in Gaza, will welcome the long overdue ceasefire for which there has been such a heavy price paid. The grief inflicted on families by the horrific acts of October 7th, and the response to it is unimaginable. The loss of civilian life.
Now, I already want to stop here because, again, the way he talks about it, the horrific events of October 7th and sort of the grim nature of what's happening, the sadness on both the Israelis and Palestinian side, he's talking about it as if this was like a natural disaster, like a flood or something that went through Israel and Gaza, and sort of now we are like fighting the humanitarian crisis. We're trying to solve it. October 7th was the Palestinian people themselves, with the help of Hamas, going into Israel and starting killing Jews. There is no other way to contextualize it. There is no other way to speak about it. And again, to sort of bring it up as this is just an act of God or something that we are now dealing with. It's already, I think, starting in, is already showing the way he's thinking about it. I mean, James, what do you think?
Yes, we had a vicious attack on civilians, on innocent Jewish civilians on October 7th. The neo-Nazis of our time, the Nazi-like creatures in the area, are Hamas. And on on a memorial about the Holocaust, to in any way be talking about it like that is really, really, it's worse than poor taste in my mind. It is morally ignoring the very causes of the Holocaust, which are still in operation in the Middle East. Israel has been responding uh, to an attack on civilians against vicious anti-Semites who are willing to engage in Nazi-like atrocities. Of course, the Hamas is not capable of the same kind of scale of devastation that the Nazis were all at once. As you point out, 6 million Jews were slaughtered, a million alone in Auschwitz. And that should have been the focus, obviously. European anti-Semitism in general should have been the shame that the Irish leader was talking about. But instead, he equates anti-Semitic monsters who bear close similarity to the Nazis, and he's sort of defending them in calling what Israel is doing. And the implication here is quite clear. What Israel is doing is wrong in defending itself, in trying to stop October 7th from happening. If we have modern Nazis on the table, 21st century Nazis on the table, it's Hamas, if it's anyone. They exist, Hamas as an organization exists simply to destroy the state of Israel. And the state of Israel, of course, came into being because of the Holocaust. And so he's in effect taking as many Irish leaders have for a long time, taking the anti-Jew position almost reflexively.
We have a super chat from Bonnie, thank you so much, and a super chat from PC, thank you so much. PC says, "Hi James and Daniel from Philly, USA. Ireland's president is shameful." Someone says Irish were not neutral during, were not neutral on the Holocaust, but rather World War II. Why would they have allied with England? Do you know any history? So, I mean, if you wanna really go into it, I believe we didn't know the full extent of what was happening inside of specifically the concentration camps during the. We only found out, after we've conquered those areas. But we knew about the rise of anti-Semitism in Germany. We knew about Kristallnacht. We knew about a lot of these things. Not to mention, we knew about how Germany has been acting during the during the parts of Second World War, not to mention during parts of the First World War. So, sort of trying to act as like we have no idea what like Germany actually is, and sort of to put it on like a scale that basically Britain is as bad as Germany, or basically that being neutral in this way is sort of like an okay position. Not to mention, even something like Italy was on a different side in the First World War and then picked the other side, sort of implying that, because something happened 20 years ago or something happened, in the past, that now basically from now on we always have to be. No, you have even nations that fight against. You had the American Revolution, and then you had friendly relations between Britain and America, because there was a recognition that we both stand for the Western values, we both stand for liberty, and whatever happened in the past happened in the past. And uh is that justification also now for Ireland's like anti-Semitism, for Ireland's basically pro-Hamas policy, that in the past something bad was done, so now we're gonna be anti-Semitic. Now we're going to be pro-Nazi, like from now on.
Being neutral about the Nazis in World War II is an immoral position. Any European country who took a neutral stance in the conflict between the Allies and the Nazis is no friend of liberty, no friend of the Jews in general. The position about the Nazis was quite on the Jews was quite clear. The Irish envoy to Nazi Germany was a vicious anti-Semite. He was replaced by the end of the 1930s, but there were clerics in the Catholic Church in Ireland who were saying vicious anti-Semitic things. The leaders of, as I say, the Irish independence movement were by and large anti-Semites. Neutrality when you're fighting the Nazis is an immoral position. The Nazis themselves had identified, the Nazis had a grand plan to kill as many Jews in all of Europe as they could. And in their grand plan, it included the 5,000 Jews that they could identify in Ireland, which means those Jews were on the hit list, Hitler's hit list. And after the war, after all the Holocaust, the information about the Holocaust had come out, that's when Ireland adopted a stance against Jewish immigration to their country because they didn't want more anti-Semitism. So they took an anti-Semitic position after World War II about Jewish immigration. Now, this policy, this immoral, vicious policy of neutrality against the Nazis is now what we're seeing here. Listen to what the Irish leader just said on Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's in effect saying both sides are bad. Well, that's the same vicious anti-Semitic neutrality that Ireland has been famous for when it comes to Jews. It goes all the way back to the Nazis themselves. And as I say, since the beginning of the 20th century, Ireland has had a history of vicious anti-Semitism. Ireland is not a friendly place for Jews and hasn't been, never really has been, but in the 20th century, and now in the 21st century, they're taking a position of neutrality when it comes to killing Jews. That's the only way of looking at it. Ireland was neutral officially, but they were attacked by both sides. Irish shipping was attacked by both sides. The Irish government was giving the British government intelligence, that's true, but especially as it pertained to attacks on Northern Ireland, which was still part of the United Kingdom. But on the other hand, as I say, the Irish independence leaders, the leaders of the IRA and Sinn Féin, vicious anti-Semites, if you just look up the things that they said about Jews. And of course, the Irish Free State's ambassador, if you will, to Nazi Germany was himself a vicious anti-Semite. But we're just seeing the continuation of Irish Jew hatred, Irish neutrality when it comes to slaughtering Jews.
Yeah, and it's not even neutrality at this point. Ireland is one of the biggest supporter of the so-called Palestinian state, which in the context of October 7, in the context of when they became big proponents, big supporters of, especially the Irish president always speaks up for so-called Palestine, but in effect, they are helping Hamas. They are supporting Hamas, not to mention what Palestinian people stand for. They stand for October 7. Large amount of them still support it, even until now.
A large amount of Irish people supported the Nazis because they were fighting the Brits. And I understand that the Irish were fighting for their independence against Britain, but that is no excuse, no justification. Even if you believe in Irish independence, it's no justification for being neutral when someone is slaughtering millions of Jews. Today, there is no justification for being neutral. And you're right, they're not neutral at all when they call for a Palestinian state in this context, in the wake of October 7th. No, to be neutral to evil of that kind is to be pro-evil. There is no fence sitting when it comes to monstrosities like the Holocaust or monstrosities like October 7th. The worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust, and the Irish have learned seemingly nothing in the 80 years that have elapsed, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves. They apparently are in favor of more Jew killing, by implication at least. That's the only way to really look at it. You can't be, when someone is slaughtering a group of people for racist reasons, and you say, well, I'm neutral about the issue, it's clear what you are. You are giving sanction, aid, comfort to those who are killing Jews. It's despicable.
We have a super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says, "Never forget Ireland's then Prime Minister signed a book of condolence for Germany in 1945." James, do you know about that?
Yeah, the Irish, they can say that they took a neutral stance, but it's clear that many people in Ireland, as I say, all of the real extremists for Irish independence were pro-Nazi in effect and anti-Semitic explicitly. And you can see that reflected in a number of ways that Ireland is engaged in their foreign policy, and that was one notorious example. The way they keep out Jews, for example, and have kept out Jews, the way they've discriminated against, for example, as I pointed out, Jewish businessmen in Limerick were banned basically. And this caused flight from Limerick and Ireland of Jews and from Ireland in general. And you can really hardly blame them. Ireland is one of the most it still is, a lot of anti-Semitism has been purged from the minds by guilt in Central Europe. I don't see any sign of that really among the Irish population. The current government of Ireland appears to reflect the opinions that are so widespread in Ireland. Ireland has and has traditionally had of many, I mean, over the last century or so, it's pockmarked by official demonstrations of sympathy for anti-Semites, anti-Semitism, and even the German government. It's that bad.
We also have a super chat from PC again. Thank you so much. He says, "James, you're 100% correct." And a super chat from Christian. Thank you so much. He says, "To James, I understand your point, but there were also countries who had to choose between two evils, like Finland or Bulgaria, and they saved their own Jews despite being with Germany." So if I can quickly, then I'll go to you. I wouldn't use that justification, because when do you stop? Like, if you say, well, we have to join Germany or they'll take us out. Well, they give out Czechoslovakia, they take, Hungary joins them, Bulgaria joins them, Romania joins them, parts of Yugoslavia join them, the Free Croatian state. I'm not sure how much Finland really cooperated with the Nazis, besides, they were fighting the same enemy. What if, like, Poland should also join, the Baltic states should also join them? Like, at some point you have to fight against evil, even if it's tough, and many nations do. I mean, what would we do if France, and I guess technically part of France did join the Germans, but if, like, France completely surrendered, if UK completely surrendered to the Nazis, if Greece completely surrendered to the Nazis, I mean, at what point, would we actually fight the Nazis if we always refuse to fight them?
Brave Finland repelled, all by itself, little Finland repeatedly repelled attacks from the Soviet Union, and good for them. But you know something? Ireland is not in the position of Bulgaria or Finland being caught between the communists and the Nazis. They were not. They were not. The Ireland was safely away from where most of the fighting was. And so they have no such excuse of being so-called caught between two evils, which were two equal evils. You know, what am I to choose when it's the choice of Stalin or Hitler? When you're in the East, when you're in Eastern Europe, that became a very complex situation. When you're in Ireland, there is no such excuse, none whatever. They had no such excuse. Ireland should have joined in with the Allied cause, even if it meant being allied with Great Britain. Sorry, when you've got an enemy like that that's threatening Western Europe, and you're secured away enough, like Ireland is, you're not caught in the crossfire between the communists and the Nazis. You're not caught in that difficult position that Eastern Europe was caught in. No, Ireland has no such excuse.
Christian in the chat says, where was it? You missed the point. The Soviet Union attacked Finland. So, I mean, you definitely defend yourself when you have to. But again, even when it comes to Finnish sort of cooperation with the Nazis, it definitely wasn't on the sort of, like, real, like, Italy sort of level.
Right.
Like, it was pretty much, we are attacked, and sort of we are fighting the same enemy. But I think it's definitely much different than whatever was going on in Ireland. And you have to stand up to evil. You can again, we cannot always say we have to join. Similar way, we didn't have to join the Soviet Union to fight the Nazis. We shouldn't have,
Right,
countries shouldn't have joined the Nazis to fight Soviet Union, in the
right,
same way.
right, exactly. No, it's no excuse to become a Nazi to say you're fighting the communists in Germany or anywhere else. It's no excuse to say you're a communist because you're fighting Nazis in Russia or anywhere else. Look, if you're really going to take a side, or when you're in Western Europe, not take a position against Nazi Germany in general. Yeah, no, of course, the Allies, their great mistake was to be allied to Stalin at all in the course of World War II. Ireland remained neutral as Britain has their and France have their backs against the wall from attacks from the Nazis. In that context, neutrality is not neutrality at all, is it? When you're being neutral against Nazi invasions and attacks, when rockets are raining down in England and the German army is occupying all of northern France, Ireland's neutrality is despicable, absolutely immoral and despicable. Um, Now, there were Irish people who went on their own and left the country and volunteered to fight with the Allies, and good for them. But the Irish government was in a position of official neutrality throughout the war. As I say, the Irish envoy to Nazi Germany was anti Semitic and pro Nazi from 1933 to 1939, I believe. And that kind of tells you the attitude, the official attitude of the Irish government at that time. And then, as I say, after World War II, they restricted Jewish, after World War II, and everyone knew about the Holocaust. They restricted Jewish immigration into Ireland for purely anti Semitic reasons, claiming it was to cut down on anti Semitism. No, the Irish attitude has been a semi-official anti-Semitic one for more than a century.
We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. Someone, because I mentioned Greece, someone mentioned Greece resisted the Axis powers for a total of 219 days between October 1940 and April 1941. I mean, if you think that like joining the Nazis so you don't lose is like morally preferable, and I understand the sort of like the pragmatic solution for it. You don't want to get conquered, but you can like you shouldn't join the Nazis. I think it should be pretty simple. And when people accept this position, and it's this is not like something we've only dealt with. This is the case now. This is the people who, well, we shouldn't support Ukraine because Ukraine's gonna lose anyway. So why support it? So Russia gets to take over Ukraine. It gets to take over Georgia. It gets to take over the Baltic states. I mean, they are in NATO, but they are in NATO, but like we shouldn't fight back because we don't wanna start a big war. I mean, you have to stand up to evil, even when it's you have to stand up to evil much sooner. And when it came to Second World War, the evil of it was that by the time it started, it was already too late because you stand up to evil much sooner. And so yeah, I think that's what was truly despicable when it came to it. So yeah, by the time they got to Greece, we failed on already so many levels that
There were so many brave Greek fighters resisting the Nazis. There were so many brave people throughout the Balkans were trying to resist the Nazis. Ireland was never in that position. So Irish neutrality in that context is even more despicable, isn't it? It's not as though they're trying to avoid a conflict between the communists and the Nazis. No, they were simply avoiding taking any stance of help against the Nazis in Western Europe. Now, that's an entirely different context and was a perfectly morally disgusting position. Neutrality on the Nazis, neutrality on the Nazi attacks, neutrality on the Holocaust. No, there's no neutral position there. That's an evil position to be neutral on it. There's a right. One clear thing objectivism gives us is an objective morality, where we can say there's a right side and a wrong side. And when you're neutral against evil, you are actually sanctioning that evil. And I can only think that Ireland's position during World War II, before World War II, and after World War II, in being neutral on the Holocaust, Nazism, etc., is an evil position. Neutrality about Nazism is evil.
We have a super chat from Jonathan. Not sure if I read it. We also have a super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says, James, I will never set foot in Ireland again. My young cousins were hostages. No way will I go there. Well, sorry to hear that.
I can understand. I totally understand your position. It's the Irish government and the Irish people, I think, are really at root the problem here. There's been a festering anti-Semitism in Ireland for a long time, and Ireland really should be shamed, should be morally sanctioned in whatever way we can. And so I can understand not visiting Ireland ever again. Yeah.
So we don't have much time yet, so I'll just mention a few other things from the president and Ireland itself. And if people are interested, they can check out some videos from the past we did on Ireland. But Ireland's chief rabbi Yoni Wieder noted that in May, Higgins, the Irish president, had dismissed Israeli concerns of rising anti-Semitism in Ireland as a PR exercise, alienating many of the country's Jews, basically saying, I think there was recently a report made that from the looks of it, 50% of the world is anti-Semitic. And since October 7, we have seen the rise of anti-Semitism around the world and even in Western countries and especially in Ireland. So sort of dismissing that as like a PR stunt can already tell you a lot. There are many other things you can check out, but we are out of time. So James, any last words?
No, the Irish president committed a shameful act. He really did by bringing up, the so-called suffering of Hamas, which is all of Hamas's own doing. Any suffering in Gaza is the direct result of Palestinian anti-Semitism. And by putting them on the same stand, he is in effect being like his ancestors in Ireland, neutral on Nazi-like creatures. No, he should have taken the opportunity to shame his own people for their monstrous history of anti-Semitism. It was no place to bring up. In fact, he could have avoided the current situation that Israel faces altogether. And if he was to bring it up, he surely should have noted that October 7th was Nazi-like, that Hamas are the modern day Nazi types out there trying to destroy Israel and kill all Jews. So no, the Irish president, unfortunately, has just continued a long, despicable history of Irish anti-Semitism.
So we have the reality show coming up in just a minute or so. We'll be talking about Trump's plan to relocate Palestinians to Jordan and Egypt, maybe some other countries. I think there were some talks there. So make sure to join us. We'll actually have a special guest. We've had him in the past a few years ago, but he's back here again. So make sure to link for that is in the chat. Make sure to join us there in just a minute or so. Thank you, James, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and bye-bye.
Be safe.